January 21st, 1793, the Place de la Révolution, Paris. The man who was once considered God's shadow on earth is now kneeling like a common criminal beneath the most terrifying machine in history. Louis XVI shouts to the crowd, "I die innocent." But his voice is instantly drowned out by the rolling thunder of military drums. The executioner pulls the lever. The moment the king's head fell into the basket, the old world died. The French Revolution is a story of hope that descended into madness. A story where the streets of Paris were washed in blood. But how did the beautiful slogan of liberty lead to this? And how did the heroes of the revolution transform into monsters?
To understand this rage, you have to look at the dinner table. France was bankrupt. Previous kings had emptied the treasury on foreign wars and endless parties. The inequality was maddening. Society was divided into three estates. The nobility and the church, the top 3%, were filthy rich and paid zero taxes. Meanwhile, the common people, the other 97%, were starving and paid 100% of the taxes. A single loaf of bread cost a month's wages. People were eating grass to survive. Yet, in the Palace of Versailles, Queen Marie Antoinette was busy buying diamonds and sculpting gravity, defying hairstyles. When she was told the people had no bread, the rumor spread that she replied, "Let them eat cake." Whether she actually said it or not doesn't matter. To the people, it was proof that the crown didn't care if they lived or died.
The accumulated rage finally exploded on July 14, 1789. The people of Paris needed weapons to defend themselves. Where was the gunpowder? Inside the Bastille, a prison that symbolized the king's tyranny. The mob didn't just storm the gates. They tore the fortress apart, brick by brick, with their bare hands. The violence showed its face on day one. They killed the governor of the prison, cut off his head, put it on a pike, and paraded it through the streets. When the king heard the news, he asked his duke, "Is it a revolt?" The duke replied, "No, sire, it is a revolution."
At first, the revolutionaries didn't want to kill the king. They just wanted a constitution. Louis XVI pretended to agree, but in the shadows, he was plotting betrayal. On a dark night in 1791, the royal family dressed as servants and fled toward the border in a carriage, hoping to return with a foreign army to crush the people. But the plan failed in a small town called Varennes. A sharp-eyed postmaster grew suspicious of a traveler. He pulled out a gold coin, looked at the face stamped on it, and then looked at the traveler. It was him, the king. Louis was dragged back to Paris in humiliation. The deadly silence of the crowds signaled one thing: the father of the nation was now a traitor. With the king dead, power fell into the hands of the radical Jacobins and their leader, Robespierre. The reign of terror had begun. The guillotine, invented to be a humane form of execution, became a factory line of death. Paranoia ruled the streets. Here is a horrifying fact few people know. The executions were so frequent that the executioners hired a young artist named Marie Tussaud. Yes, that Madame Tussaud, to make wax masks of the freshly severed heads to preserve the faces of the enemies. She was forced to dig through piles of warm bodies to find her subjects. But Robespierre's madness knew no bounds. He turned on his best friend, Georges Danton, a hero of the revolution who dared to say, "Enough killing." Robespierre signed his death warrant. As Danton stood on the scaffold, he looked the executioner in the eye and delivered one of history's most badass lines. "Show my head to the people. It is worth seeing." With Danton dead, everyone knew they could be next. Fear finally united the government. They turned on Robespierre. When soldiers arrived to arrest him, a gunshot rang out. Robespierre's jaw was shattered, either by a suicide attempt or a soldier's bullet. The next day, he was dragged to the Place de la Révolution, unable to speak, bleeding and broken. Moments before the end, the executioner violently ripped the bandage holding his broken jaw together. His scream echoed through the square, silenced only by the falling blade. The revolution had finally devoured its own children. With Robespierre dead, the nightmare ended. A weary and wounded France looked for order and found it in the sword of a brilliant young general, Napoleon Bonaparte. The French Revolution was a path paved with blood, betrayal, and mistakes. But it changed one thing forever. The world learned that kings are not gods. The motto, liberty, equality, fraternity, was written in blood, but it was written to stay. If you were in Danton's shoes, would you have stood up to Robespierre or stayed silent to survive? Let me know in the comments. For more journeys into the bloody history of us, make sure to subscribe to the channel.